Good afternoon. This is just a quick video. It's going to be on our Patreon for it's a freebie, but it's over on YouTube. It's just really an overview of some of the different projects that I've been doing recently and how I prepare before I even put a pencil down on a piece of paper. And for me, this is one of the most important parts of the artwork, and that's the prep that goes into it. Because the more preparation you do, then the chances are the better that your image is going to come out, and you'll learn a lot more. I mean, every time I do a project, I learn a little bit more about either myself and also how I work. Excuse my voice, it's still a little bit croaky. I don't know what's happened. My voice just disappeared a few weeks ago. Um, don't feel particularly ill, but it's just croaky at the moment. So this was the eye. People that know me, this is on my Facebook. This is the eye of a Dalmatian. I love doing eyes, but um, I wanted to show you this just as a small project, and the overview of how I came to produce this. I am going to be doing another video of this and actually putting it on Patreon. But for now, this is just a freebie of how we're going to how I sort of approached it. So it will help when it goes on to Patreon for people to understand what I went through to do this. So it's only one little square, but it was very enjoyable, and took quite a few hours to get there. So the first thing that obviously I do is I pick an image. So when I'm looking at an image, I do like to look at really some of the sort of the contrast, to see what the contrasts are like, so that I can sort of see, the light and the darks, that they help. Also, the which way the eye is looking and how much space you're going to have on the end of the paper. Also, just things that something catches your eye, and seeing what they look like. So this one was a Dalmatian. It was the actual image initially was a full Dalmatian, which I've sort of cut down, um, and just done the eye part. Well, it was a head. That was the shot of the actual Dalmatian. And as you can see, he's looking forward. And when I saw that, it's sort of like the questions that come into your head. What's he seeing? He's got his head up proud. He's seen something in the distance. And, you know, this is what attracts people to look at portraits. So that's what first attracted me to this. But then, I mean, I'm obviously going to look at doing this later on as a full project. But what also interested me was I looked into the eyes and I could see quite a bit of activity in the eyes. So this is why I cut it down and I actually got an image of the eye. Now, for the drawing, what I did do was I did it on Procreate, which is another digital program. I have a separate iPad, which I have Procreate on, and using the photographic image underneath, I did do a Procreate drawing of this, and there is a video out there explaining how to do that. And then what I did, I actually reduced the image size down to this sort of size. So it's just a little square size. So I put it onto a square bit of paper, and then obviously added some of the fur detail around it. So that's what I did for that. I did the line drawing, fetched it up, probably printed it out. It was quite large, so I just made it that bit smaller. And then when I wanted to transfer it onto paper, all I did was I got a soft pencil rather than a HB. I got a nice soft pencil, just went over the back of it, put it down on some hot press watercolor paper. The one that I use the most is the Fabriano Artistico. You can get it in a block, which is white, extra white. I also have it loose. I get the full imperial sheets, and I get that's more of it like this. It's more of a creamy color. But I've also got other brands such as Saunders and Waterford, the Archers, and a few other pieces of paper to try it on. There's also the Bristol Vellum Smooth. Um, but I did this one on the Fabriano Artistico on it was a sheet that was cut down. I had some spare sheets, so I've just sort of cut some squares out to do some smaller projects for this purpose to put on YouTube and on Patreon. So that was a drawing. So then that was transferred onto the paper. So the next thing that I had to do is obviously picking colours. And there's several ways you can do this. I have got several apps on my tablet and on my phone. I've got what you call, there's one that's called a colour pencil picker, which is sort of, I'll just put this down here so you can see it. So this is what this one's called. Yes, you do have to buy this one. I think it was £7.99. And what it does, it has all the different brands of pencils, more or less. You've got the Luminance, the Polychromos, the Derwent Artist. And you've got the Lightfast as well, and Artesia. And what you do is with this one, I found there are limitations, and that is that you're picking one brand of pencil. So say you pick that, you upload your image basically. So let's just say we're looking at this tiger, say. And then you can zoom in and zoom out. And what you do is if you move this around, it gives you, so this is just for luminance. So it's actually picking out. So you can see the target on here is greener than that. So obviously that's not going to work much. So you could, but it's a lot of faffing to go back. So if we use the Polychromos, load the same image, which is the tiger, zoom in, and then, you know, you can get it gives you the colours in that particular brand. Okay, the other one that you can use is another colour picker, pen picker it's called. Now that's on my big computer, so at the minute I can't get to that. But that one, what that does, it fetches the image up, much the same as that, but then it has a list at the bottom, and it gives you the top 4 pencil ranges, which is the Caran d'Ache Luminance, the Derwent Lightfast, the Faber-Castell Polychromos, what's the other one? I'm not sure what the other one is. Oh, it's Prismacolor. Yeah. So you've got 4 top brands there. But what it'll do at the side, it'll give you each one in each range. But what is better on that is that it gives you a percentage of accuracy. So one brand could be, the pencil that it's picked out could be 96% accurate to that colour. So that's the one that I use a lot of if I'm struggling to see the colours. I mean, I do most of my colour picking just through eye, but that's come through experience and looking closely at images. And then the other way that I sometimes do is I have a template, which is just a white A4 sheet, and around the side I've got all of these circular shapes, which I keep that. I put the image in the middle, and then I use the Illustrator program, but there are lots of other photo editing programs that do a similar thing. So I'll click on one. So on this one, I've clicked there, and I've taken it to this eye here, to this point just here. And then I've used the colour picker, and I've clicked on it and then put it into that circle. So I've got some colours. So I've only done so many. I mean, the rest of the colours I can pick myself. But these are sort of guidelines, and I'll be working on light and dark, lighter and darker shades of these and tints of these colours. But it gives me a basic. So we've got some in the white areas down here, it's white, it's quite warm, whereas up this side it can be quite cool. So that's another way of picking colours. And what you do then is when you print this out, you can actually use your colour pencils and see if you can match them up to any of these, and that gives you a good start. Okay, so that's the one that I did for the Dalmatian. But also what I explain is what I do have is I have here I have some little pots, and I have what you call my core set of pencils, which most artists have. So like these two pots here, that one's full of all the warm greys out the Polychromos range, because ultimately in every project that I do, I almost always use some of the greys, not all of them, but some of them. So I keep them all in a pot. So you've got the warm grey 1 to warm grey 6 in that pot, and in this pot I've got the warm grey 1 to warm grey 6 in that pot. Then I've got another pot that's got all of my sort of whites, ivories, and sort of like pink white out of the Lightfast range. The Lightfast range have quite a few. There's the Arctic, which is a bluey, cooler white. So I keep all of those along with the blacks in another tub. So they're easy to put my hands on. And then I've got another couple of little tubs here. So these are obviously the pencils I use a lot. And again, these are like core pencils. So I always have these kept in these little pots. And that's because they get so small that you can lose them in the bigger pots. So I have to keep the luminance separate and the Polychromos. I do have one as well with Caran d'Ache in the Pablos, but there's not that many at the moment. So you can see, I mean, most of these are going to be like this one's the burnt ochre 10%. And I use the percentage ones out of the Loomis range quite a lot. So I keep them on the side of my desk, the small pots, so they're there all the time. I have a tray here, which has got all my other little bits and bobs, like my slice tools. Sometimes if I've got a little bit of an extender in there, that's a blender. I've got my mono erasers. I've got a few of those. I've got some normal rubbers here. And a little, for when they get really, really small, the pencils, I use just a small pencil sharpener. And then in here, this is mostly whites and creams. And if you look, they get so small there. But I can put them in a pencil extender. So they're there. And these are some that are in the pencil extender that I'm using. I also have a board with a little bit of sandpaper. That is so that if the pencil's too sharp and I want a chisel edge like this one's got, if you look closely, you can see there's a chisel edge there, which is what I use a lot when I'm doing first strokes. So if it's too sharp and I need a chisel edge, I can use the sandpaper. So that's where, and then here in this space here, this is where the colours that I pick is where I'll put them. Now, whether I use all the pencils or not, we don't know. As I go along on the project, I do say what pencils I'm using, but I may not use them all, and I may actually have to go into, because I've got full sets of the Polychromos and the Luminance, I keep the ones that I don't really use, or on very rare occasions, they're in a pot in the cupboard, but I know where they are. So if it's not in my core pencil range, which I keep in a box, which is here on the top. So these are the pencils that I use most of the time. So if it's not in here, then it will be in the cupboard. And you can see I've got a choice here. I've got some Caran d'Ache. I've got some Luminance. I've got some Lightfast and the Polychromos as well. So I've got quite a good range of pencils. So I always use the Polychromos is one of my favourite brands of pencil. That is because they are translucent, whereas the Luminance are a bit more opaque. So for the translucency, you've got the colours that you're working up. So if you're working in layers of different colours, you've got the colours coming through and that affects them. So when you're picking colours, another thing to do is to get a spare piece of paper. And if you can't get an exact match to whatever colours on here, say, but you can by mixing the colours on the paper, which is how colour pencil works. Then if you've got a scrap bit of paper and it's got to match the paper that you're using, then you can just do some scribbles and you can find, pretty much every colour that you're looking for. And then what happens is if you stick to your core pencil set, as I call it, I always make sure I've got plenty of those in supply. But by using them, you get used to using them, and you also get to know how they work with other colours. So that just comes through experience. So rather than keep messing about with 120 Polychromos and 100 Luminance, and then you've got 100 Lightfast, that's a lot of pencils to keep working through. So your prep period is going to be, and you may get it wrong. So I've just picked a certain amount. I mean, there's still a lot of choice in there. But what I tend to do is I tend to put in, so like I said, I've got my warm greys and my cold greys there. I've also got my ivories and my lights and my blacks. And then here in this pot, as I say, these are the ones you'll find that you use the most. So things like Bista, the brown ochre, and then we've got like the terracotta with the sanguine, yeah, sanguine, a couple of blues in there. There'll be dark sepia, which I do use a lot. And then I've got like, what's this one? That's the brown, no, that's the burnt ochre. I've got a couple of light ones, a couple of earthy yellows. Burnt sienna is a good one. I mean, I do a lot of animals, so these are the colours that I tend to use a lot, and they're sort of easy access. They're just there on the side, so I know they're there. I mean, these are also ones that I use a lot of, but these aren't quite, I just put them in there. But yeah, I've got Payne's Grey, Intherdam Blue. We use Delft Blue from the Polychromos range. There's a couple of greens from the Polychromos range, which I find really very good, and that's the earth green. And then there's an olive green yellowish. That I use more than any green, I think. And even if you're working with animals, sometimes you can see in the coat, and this is where the experience comes in. And sort of in this one is, as well, I can see just up here at the top, there are a few bits of green in there. So, I will be using something like the olive green, yellowish. There's the earth green. And sometimes I have started using a lot more of the chrome oxide green as well. Okay, so what I would do is work through, look at the photo, if I've done it from this sort of colour chart thing, I can match them to that. But I initially just do it by eye, and I just have a quick look. So obviously I can see, because there's a lot of black and white in here, we're going to be using the greys and the whites, which I've already got put to one side. I'm also seeing here we've got some blue tinges around this where the white and the black fur overlap. So they're going to be cooler colours. So that's what I'll be looking for, cooler blues, which I've already got a pot here with 3 different blues in, which are the blues I would sort of be using. Plus the Payne's Grey is quite a nice bluey grey, but it's a bit dark for this. So I'll probably be using something like I've got here the ultramarine. I've got the light ultramarine blue and the just normal ultramarine blue there. So probably use something like those 2 colours. Now I might only just put a very soft surface of those colours in and then use the greys as well to blend them in more. Also, we've got some nice warm browns in here. So like burnt sienna. There's also like brown ochres. And the base layer for something like that, I would probably put something like an ivy in or something warm underneath there, or even a warm grey one. And then this is sort of the highlight of the eye. And like I said, there are some greens in there. There's quite a lot of blues. An highlight is never really white. It's always got other colours in there. And then obviously we've got the darks around here. But I also can see some little sort of like caput muntem or sort of browny, sort of like sepia even. You could have in the luminous, you've got the sepia, 10%, 50% of the sepia. So there'll be some of those colours in there as well. I'm also looking at quite a few of there's some browns, so there's the Bistas, Nugget, that's a good neutral colour. And some of the greys can actually neutralise the other colours that you put down. So like I say, if I put a lighter blue around this bit here where the white fur overlaps with the dark fur, and then put some greys in there and blends them, you will get this colour eventually. And then when it comes to these areas here, this is very dark, but we don't use just black. Now, if you look on a photographic, if you've got a colour, like a dipper colour dipper that you can use, when you click on it, it'll go to the black side, but in the rest of the square, it'll show you what other colour it's related to, what the pigments are in there. So if it's a warm one, it'll probably be on the red scale, but it'll be on the black side. So you know that it's a warm black. So you could add other warm colours into the black when you're layering it up. And that helps to add a bit more saturation, and it also gives you the right sort of level of black. It's a warm black. On the other hand, it could fetch up, and it could fetch up in the blue tones that you've got, and it could be in the black area of the cool of the blue tones, which means it's a cool one. So you could use your Payne's grey. You could use a lot of the cool greys in there, as well as some of the blacks. And just by building lots and lots of light layers of all different colours, that when they're mixed together, you can get a lot more saturation. Plus, just putting black down isn't going to produce a colour this dark. I mean, this is really dark. So you will be needing to add other colours in, such as the cold greys and the Payne's grey sort of thing, and the sepia. And also, there's some of the more opaque, when you come to putting the black on, use a more opaque black, which is something like the Pablo, Caran d'Ache Pablo, or even the Lightfast blacks. You've got Mars black, which is warmer than the ivory black. So all of that comes with experience, but also just experimenting. So when you do a picture, just jot down. So like here, I've put down some notes. I think I've got another one where I got another one. Yeah. So on this one, I actually went round. You can see I've gone round with different pencils from different brands, and I've put in what I think, would work. So for instance, the blue in the eye there, I thought the Polychromos, P stands for Polychromos 146, which is, I think that's the sky blue actually. Yeah, 146, that's the sky blue. So that's a very pale blue. Then we've got the Lumens 004. And then you've got these greens here, that's the earth green. But there's also Polychromos that could match that. So there's lots of different ones that you could use. And there's some way you've mixed them as well. So like, couldn't get an exact colour. So on here, I've mixed the luminance grey with the Polychromos pink white. Sorry, the luminance pink white. So the grey, the violet grey and the pink white has created this sort of colour. So in other words, the violet grey, the pink white has toned it down slightly because it's just a little bit too bright with the violet grey. On this one, we've got the burnt sienna Lightfast one, which is something like a 10%. You've got the Polychromos ones there, but they're too pink. They're not the right kind of pink. So that's quite a good one actually. The Luminance Burnt Sienna 10%. Then on here we've looked, and I've got sort of like Indian reds, luminance colours in here. So just by messing around with colours as well, you're making notes on these. These are all important notes. And getting this sort of thing done as preparation helps you in good stead for when you're doing the actual painting. Like on this one, I printed the actual. On this occasion, I wasn't at home, so I thought I'll pick some of the colours out. So I had an A4 print of this. So what I did, I just sort of pulled out with some pencil marks. So similar to the colour picker programs. And I've had a look, and I've sort of put notes so you can see it's absolutely covered in notes. And then what I've done is I've got a piece of paper, which is going to be the same piece, which was the same piece of paper as I did this image on. And by doing some of these, I put what I thought would be the base layer. So on that base layer there, I've used a warm grey one, but a little bit of cinnamon, because there's a little bit of pink coming through on the cheek area here of the dog. So it's not just a warm grey one. I've put a little bit of the cinnamon on there as well. And if you've got sort of dark colours, but you want to go back, you think you're going to be lifting out colour here, or, you know, if you're going somewhere and you want to be lifting colour out, when you put base layer down, you want to put the lightest layer you can down. Because if you need to use a slice tool, the slice tool will take off the top layers, which is going to be lots and lots of light layers, but it'll go down to the base layer. So on there, if it's a warm colour, then I could use either an ivory or a warm grey one. And I find that I use a lot of the warm grey one and the cold grey one for base layers. Now, if it looks more of a neutral colour, then I would just put both the warm grey and the cold grey one on together as a base layer. But as you can see up here, he's got a little bit of cool colour on his nose. So I'll have used the cold grey one there. And then as you come down somewhere around here where it's a little bit warmer looking, it's got like a bit of a yellow or creamy colour to it. So I've used the warm grey one there and then added in some other colours on top. So that's just an overview of how I work. So there's a lot of work goes into the preparation before I actually start to add pencil to paper and come up with an image like this. And I enjoy that as much as I do doing the drawing. And the more you do it, the more you get to enjoy it, because the more you learn and the more you see different colours, you'll see colours in there that you wouldn't have seen, say, 6 months ago. So when you start to work, you'll find that the pencil pile that you're going to be working from is got a lot more colours in there. It's a lot wider range of colours than it is when you first started. Because when you first started, you're just looking for reddy brown, so you just pick probably burnt sienna. But there is in actual fact, there's burnt ochres in there. There's brown ochres, there's burnt siennas, there's reds in there. There could be even some oranges in there, and some earthy yellows. So you do learn as you go along, and always keeping these kind of notes like I've got here. They're useful. I don't throw them away. I keep them in case I do this project again in the future. I look at what I've got there and I might have learned something else. I might add something to it. So it's worthwhile spending time on your preparation and picking the colours. Now, using the colour picker apps, I think is very good for beginners because it does start to get you to see the different colours. Now you can mix those colours to get the colour that you're looking for. And then you will sort of start to see those colours by eye. And then just use a scrap bit of paper and just do some layering of different colours to see if you can get to the colour that you're looking for. And it's all good practice. It's never wasted. And you will always be learning something. Okay, so that's an overview. I will be doing probably this eye, the Dalmatian's eye. I'll probably be doing that again on the Patreon site. I've just got to decide whether I'm going to do it on as a beginners or just as a freebie. The other thing as well that I would think about doing with this, I sometimes do use watercolor pencils for base layers, which eliminates a lot of the pencil grain coming through. Doesn't kill it, it's there. It's just that it goes into the grooves a little bit so that when you put in your actual pencil on top, it does look a lot smoother. And if you're doing something like an eye that needs to look glossy, sometimes it's really well worth doing that. But I'll explain more about that because the colour pencils that I use, the water-based ones, they are actually the Polychromos, the Faber-Castell Albert Dürer ones, because they do correspond to this Polychromos range, numbers and colour titles, they're exactly the same. And I do find them perfectly adequate for doing the watercolour bases. They're not far off behind the Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle, except in price. The Polychromos are more reasonably priced. They are the same thickness, and they do act fairly much the same, both of those. But the Polychromos, the Faber-Castell Albert Dürer are slightly cheaper, and they're more in my price range. Okay, but I will be explaining that to you a little bit later on. But thank you for listening, and I hope that's helped some of you out. And I'll be seeing a bit more of you. We're just waiting now, as you've probably looked on my Facebook. I'm having a new studio put into the garden. So everything's going to be moving from the house into the garden. So when it comes to recording, it's going to be a lot better. It's going to be in a building outside of the house, so it's not preventing people walking about and introducing outside noises. So it should be a little bit more convenient. Okay. So over the next couple of weeks, next 5 weeks, I think it is, we're going to be doing a lot of prep, getting the garden ready, and getting things ready for the new studio. Okay, so I hope to see you again soon, and thank you for watching. Thank you very much. Bye bye.